Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 8. He's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday. Here we are, getting into the latter parts here of August, and it looks like we might have something to look forward to on Saturday, right?
Yeah, they'll have the evening practice tomorrow. The Pittsburgh Steelers will. They get back to training camp today. And tomorrow, I guess they're going to televise it, although what we've seen on TV so far has not been much. But we'll see what they offer us.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see them go through, like we had said on the previous shows there, when we understand not being able to be shown, 11 on 11 stuff and anything that might compromise
the integrity of the second team offensive line.
Yeah, but it would be nice to see some of the other stuff there. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, like we said right from the get-go. We just have to take whatever little tiny morsels we can get here and there and be appreciative of them.
Yeah, we will get into some camp updates, with the few that we have, in a moment. But I do want to start with the biggest Steelers news since we last talked, Dave. Yesterday, according to Tom Pelissero, the move's not been made official yet. We don't know a corresponding move as of this recording, though maybe we'll find out in the middle of the podcast. But the Steelers are reportedly signing wide receiver Ray-Ray McCloud, who they worked out a few days ago. He's now in his third year out of Clemson. He's gotten a cup of coffee in the NFL, kick, punt, return value. I still would imagine outside looking into the roster, but someone now in the mix.
Yeah, and it makes you curious what's going to be on the back end of this transaction, the reciprocal move, because it's a bit of a curious move. Although they could probably use another wide receiver body in the room, especially if James Washington continues to not be able to practice. But he was back in. He was back moving around doing something the other day. Kind of in a limited capacity there. So it makes you wonder. Did someone in that room strain something? The other day, obviously the team was off on Thursday. So, or is someone going to go on the COVID list or what? But just because of his skill set, I think kind of being more of a smaller slot kind of receiver type, open grass type player. He's got some punt return abilities, but boy, he's got, Ray has ball issues.
That's what got him cut last year, you said. Yeah,
right? Yeah. You go back and watch that Tampa Bay game against Carolina, and I think he had. I think a lot of his muffs last year came against in the two games against Carolina, but I know he fumbled one of them away, and it was I think kind of later in the game and maybe a bit of a difference maker too. But he was gone after that. So this is a guy that has some ball security issues, especially when it comes to punt returns there. So it was curious. He was one of the several players they have brought in for a workout, these past, I guess, dating back to Monday there. So once again, I guess it'll be more interesting to see the back end of this transaction. I can't for the life of me, after watching some of his tape, make any sort of a declaration that this guy has a legitimate chance at the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we both talked about, and we'll talk about a little bit later in the podcast, Ryan Switzer and how he is just looking more and more likely to make the roster. That gives you 5. Do you need a Ray-Ray McCloud when you already have a Ryan Switzer? It's a little redundant. I think this just gives you slot help right now, gives you someone who's kick and punt return value and versatile. I could see him being carried on the practice squad just because he does have that return ability. So if someone gets hurt or there's an illness or whatever, they can just call him up, because not every guy can do kicks and punts. A lot of guys can do kicks. A lot of guys can do punts. Only a handful are capable and trusted to do both. McCloud's had his issues, but he has the experience there. So maybe he hangs around the practice squad as someone who can play in the slot, do kicks, do punts, and be called up if need be. But it's hard to and I agree, to see him on the 53.
Yeah, maybe he will be in the running for. Boy, you got short time now, man. You go from you already know. I guess it's no different than a kid being brought in, into training camp this time of year in a normal year, and then ultimately making the practice squad.
Zach Banner was one of those.
Yeah, so obviously it is plausible for such a thing to happen, but and maybe they just kind of like his return abilities that much though. So we'll definitely see on that. But in no way, shape, or form. Look, I mean, I think he's got five career catches, overall in the NFL. And really, you go back and look at his college tape. I mean, there's obviously some highlights in there at Clemson and all, but there was nothing really that made me stand up and take a big notice of him.
Yeah, I think that. How do I want to phrase this? I think that to go back to your point, how do you even show if you're a return guy like McCloud is? How do you even show that in this setting? I mean, he was not even a preseason game to show that opportunity. So I don't know what he could do to prove his way on the roster. So when it comes to Clemson receivers, you're going Deion Kane with a much better chance of Ray-Ray McCloud.
I would think so, yeah. Just from what, and I don't know how deep we're going to get into Ray here. I mean, I obviously went and looked at some tape on him yesterday, but I don't think he warrants a huge breakdown at this point, or at least not yet.
No, I'm with you. I'd be surprised he made the 53, but if there's an injury or something, then he may be in the mix from there. But that is a signing. We'll let you know the corresponding move later today. And you're right. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a Darbo or Anthony Johnson. Someone else got hurt that we're just not aware of right now because, again, not having guys at training camp really hurts us this time of year. But we'll let you know what the corresponding move to keep the roster at 80 will be.
Maybe we'll know before we get off the show. We'll see.
We'll know 3 seconds after we get off the show. That's the way this thing goes. Speaking of potential injuries, let's circle back to the injury report again, what we have so far. We did get some good news, I think. We had a show after Kevin Dotson's injury, or when was our last show? That was Tuesday. When did Dotson's injury happen? On Tuesday?
I'm trying to remember. Didn't it happen on Tuesday?
Yeah, but I guess that would have been after our show. So anyway, Kevin Dotson did have a knee injury during practice. I believe that was on Tuesday. It sounded semi-serious from what the report was and the framing of it was, but he was back at practice, at least in Jersey, not actually practicing, but standing and with teammates for that would have been Wednesday's practice. So that's a good sign. Seems like that Dotson has avoided serious injury, something Mike Tomlin also confirmed after Wednesday's practice. So that's the big thing from the injury front. Also tight end Dax Raymond ruled an ankle. Tomlin deemed that short-term as well. So early in the camp, early into the pattern practice portion of training camp, but no major injuries. And unfortunately, we're seeing around the league so many key guys going down, and so far so good for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, you just hold your breath every practice. That's about all you can do. And look, you can't live in your fears. You have to get done the work that you want to get done. And as usual, to hear Mike Tomlin talk after that practice and how Ben Roethlisberger had to help Kevin Dotson off the field. You just you wondered what's this going to be, and you kept your fingers crossed that maybe you have a Ramon Foster type situation where maybe it felt and looked and seemed worse than what it actually was, and based on what we can tell, and look, the team didn't make any type of move, and as you mentioned, boy, it wasn't hard to pick out that number 69 standing on the sideline there, and I tried to zoom as best as I could to see if there was anything on. I think it was his left knee, and it just looked like he was just standing around in shorts more than anything. And the fact that he was out there and able to stand, I think, is a testament in itself. One day after practice here, this is a tough kid too. And probably lucky too. 52 or 53 consecutive games at Louisiana Lafayette just usually doesn't just happen by accident, there. So hopefully it's as we are speculating and nothing serious there. It would be nice to get him back in those rep lines sooner rather than later, but we'll obviously take him being healthy and not having to go on IR, I guess, as a trade-off for that.
Absolutely. Seems short term. For other Steelers working their way back, as you mentioned earlier, James Washington seems to be working his way back. Chris Wormley was at least doing some individual stuff, it appeared, had a helmet on for Wednesday's practice. We'll see where he's at Friday after yesterday's off day. So David Castro, I think, was minor. Marquis Bounces, after personal excuse, was back at practice. So those minor day-to-day injuries, guys seem to be getting closer to returning fully in practice.
Yeah, I guess it would sound like the three really kind of sidelined right now would be Raymond, Dotson, and DeCastro, and we do not know the extent or really what DeCastro is dealing with there. But as Mike Tomlin claimed, it's minor in nature there. And once again, they haven't made any. We'll obviously have to wait and see what the back end of the roster move of the Ray-Ray McCloud move is there, but I mean, hopefully it's not Dotson having to go on, something
Sure.
along those lines. I suppose we don't know until we know kind of situation there. But so far so good, at least it seems heading into Friday.
Yep, and fingers crossed, knock on wood, that continues by the time we talk again on Tuesday. Looking at general training camp updates, again, information will sound like a broken record, but it's just been limited at this point. Have heard good things about rookie wide receiver Chase Claypool. Joe Hayden's talked about him winning jump ball situations, winning contested situations, and just kind of flashing, it feels like, every practice. Now, that's not a big surprise because he's such a physical freak. You would expect him to look good in these situations. I think about Justin Hunter from a couple years ago and the praise he got early in camp, and just to be expected. But good for Claypool. Good start there for him. Good start for UG3, the linebacker that I think many have overlooked and underrated and kind of forgotten about, but he continues to turn heads in his second training camp.
At least it looks like we know who the practice player of the day is, because those players usually end up, I think, in the post-practice Zoom sessions, if you will. I think we've had Ulysees Gilbert and Ryan Switzer these last couple of days, so we have that working for us there. But yeah, I mean, look, UG3 is a guy we definitely like to hear about stepping up there, right?
Yeah, I've talked about him for a while now, and I've been very cautiously optimistic because what I saw at training camp last year and the preseason last year, it just tells me I think that he's got the foundational skills to start. Not this year necessarily, but I think as early as next year. We'll talk about later in the show some of the cap hits and cap casualty possibilities with this looming cap crunch. So I think UG3's got the athleticism, the processing, his tackling was a big improvement last year as a rookie than it was at Akron, and he seemed like he picked off a pass. I guess it was, I'm not sure if it was in team or individual or what the case was, but picked off a pass intended for Kareth White the other day and just seems to be in the few notes we get. And so I'm comfortable with him being the number 3 inside linebacker, and the reason why I didn't want to go sign a veteran or bring back Mark Barron or something like that was because I want a guy like UG3 to get all of those reps. And I know Mike Tomlin said, well, he's a rookie in my eyes because he missed last year, but listen, when you know the system, you know the scheme, when you're comfortable, he's night and day from his rookie year, and that allows him to play fast and just focus on what's happening on the field.
Absolutely. Boy, this could solve a little bit of longer term problems past this year as well too, if he's able to transition in his second year here. And Mike Tomlin, as I think we have written about, talking about it's a little bit harder with him because he missed so much time during his rookie season, and obviously was limited to the to special team stuff. And it is a shame more than anything that back injury prevented him from practicing. It would have been one thing for him just to been a special teams guy his whole rookie season, but still be able to partake in the practices there. So look, this is one of the things that kind of gets you excited, and this is another one of those things that makes you frustrated that there is no preseason games to watch this year.
Yeah, that's a guy that could have used a couple preseason games for sure. But what can you do? But he continues to look good in the practice setting at least. And again, I think that he's a sleeper at least overall, and how the fan base views him. A lot of concern there at depth inside linebacker. But I do like having UG3 as potential next man. Anything else camp notes wise? Dave, Ryan Switzer, as you mentioned, seemed to have a good day on Wednesday's practice. I think scored in the 7 shots or 2-minute drill, whatever the case was, and just feels like he's got a really good path to the 53.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy that's going to be hard to keep off now at this point. And I switched him on my latest pre kind of camp or start of camp there 53-man roster because of the fact that familiarity would due to the pandemic and what all has transpired this offseason, it's going to be so hard for one of those younger receivers that was not with this team last year to crack the 53, and it just really sounds like he didn't mince words about his relationship, I think, with Roethlisberger during that interview and all like that. So he really talks about seven meaning Roethlisberger really being in his corner and all like that. And I think there's just a trust factor that's. And look, I mean, Switzer does look like he's in a lot better shape. Not that I've ever viewed that as being a hindrance to him to this date, so far here. But look, I mean, if you go back to a couple years ago when he had all those catches, who was targeting him? Roethlisberger. You go back to last season in the first 6 quarters. He was targeted quite a bit, and I think 5 or 6 of his of the whatever 7, 8, 9 catches that he had last year came from Roethlisberger. Once Roethlisberger went down 6 quarters into the season, I think Switzer had maybe 2 more targets from that point forward, and one was later in the game against the Seahawks that I think was for no gain, and then one later on, I think maybe against the Rams or something like that for a negative 2 yards there. But regardless, it's hard to envision him not making a 53-man roster.
I believe negative 2 yards was his long last season, right? I think he's going to make the 53 for just the versatility, playing in the slot. He can play the X in a pinch. He can be kick and punt returner. I don't know if he'll start at punt return, but he can be back up there and be in the mix in the kick return game as well. Here's the quote he said, as you referenced, Switzer on Ben, saying, quote, "So I'm fortunate to play with him. I know he's someone that's in my corner. And when I say prove him right, I mean literally that I try to prove him right because I know he believes in me. And it's nice to have someone in your corner. It's nice to have your quarterback in your corner. It's nice to have and this is my interpretation, it's nice to have a Hall of Fame quarterback in your corner. And as I've talked to some former Steelers in the past, like DeMarcus Ayers, when Ben's in your corner, when Ben has your trust, when Ben bangs the table for you, you're making the team. You're going to get involved. And so barring something unforeseen, expect Ryan Switzer to be part of the 52-man roster when they go week 1 to the Giants.
Yeah, most definitely. Once again, he's going to be tough to get off this roster when it comes to Switzer there. And now I guess the interesting thing is, is he going to be your week 1 punt returner, or is that job going to go to Deontay Johnson?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's possible. I would still put Deontay Johnson back there. As Tomlin says, don't live in your fears. I think Deontay Johnson, obviously the more explosive guy. You saw that last season. I think his technique cleaned up a whole lot. And so, that may not put Switzer in the punt return battle right away. Could it be kick return, though? That's possible. If Gareth White can't make the roster, then I think Switzer has a really good chance to make it, because then you start looking at, do you put a rookie back there like Mcfarland, or do you stick with Switzer? I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but he certainly can be potentially in either camp and punt return or kick return. Like I said earlier, it's not common to see guys who have trust in, or at least able to do both. I know Switzer may not do it very well, but at least he's got the ability and experience to do it, which not a lot of guys have. Dave, anything else you've heard and read from practice that you wanted to pass along?
No, we're getting bits and pieces here. So, and some of these media pool reports are only just really a couple of lines or so, but, it's hard to disseminate what exactly is going on. You see, they'll write about 2 or 3 reps, and then everybody wants to, like what's going on with Terrell Edmonds. We've heard good and bad, right?
Yeah, we have heard some good things, though. It sounded like, we talked about that one play that Vance skied over him, but it sounds like other than that, Edmonds has been positive.
All right. And, we heard evidently Devin Bush talked to the media this morning. So we'll further be able to, once that video gets posted on Steelers.com, break down what he had to say. But it sounds like they're having as many competition periods as they possibly can right now. So, look, this team's got to get try to get as much hitting and real game kind of in-game experience, stressful situations as they can. So that's why that's just another reason to kind of hold your breath kind of moving forward here.
Mm-hmm. But as I read about this morning, it does feel like they've taken a slower pace to training camp. They have the luxury of doing that without a looming preseason game because they only went 2 days with padded practice, and then Wednesday they were just in shells and had an off day yesterday. So it feels like things have been a little bit slower pace, maybe a little less intense in terms of a normal training camp and adjusting to the circumstances. One guy that I haven't heard much about that I was hoping to hear some good things about, Mason Rudolph. I think in the 2-minute drill on Wednesday, I believe it was unsuccessful. We don't know all the details there, but you would think that you would hope at least that Rudolph was going to show that big jump from year 2 to year 3. I'm not saying he's doing bad. I'm just saying I haven't heard about him, which generally may not be a great sign.
Rudolph, in the what was it? Was it 7 shots? I think, right? No, it was in the 2-minute drill.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he didn't complete a pass, right?
Right, which is not a great sign.
No, that's not a great sign, but it is one period there. So
sure.
It's another one of those things that how did he look the rest of the practice?
Mm-hmm.
But look, I mean, this is one guy that we said that this off season here, this training camp, they're going to have to try to find out as much as they possibly could about him. Obviously, not having the preseason games, and will they learn enough to maybe potentially make a decision to bring in another backup? I kind of doubt it, right? Or will
Sure.
he?
I'm not expecting that. Again, not being able to see Rudolph with my own 2 eyes and evaluate him makes that, in my opinion, kind of meaningless right now. But I'm just saying, have you heard – I'm genuinely asking, have you heard anything positive about Rudolph in the first couple of days of padded training camp?
I can't say that I have.
Yeah.
Nothing that's really, nothing that's really made me sit up and take notice on. But once again, we're talking about, bits and pieces of information here. Nobody counting. But no, I can't remember anything where I was like, oh wow, that's great. It's great to hear. It's great to hear that.
Right. Yeah, the same way I've yet to hear that too, and it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It may just not be getting reported. Who knows? But I would expect Rudolph to shine in a camp like this, where this feels like old hat to him. The game slowed down so much for him. He's been through the ringer. On Sundays, training camp should be easy for him. So you would think that you would hear good things. Again, I know we're all kind of just speculating about speculation right now, but I'm hoping, at least I'll put it this way, I'm hoping to hear some good things about Mason Rudolph over the next week or so.
Agreed.
All right, Dave. Again, anything else from camp? That's probably it on training camp updates. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, I think that's got it.
All right, let's talk about some player interviews. Benny Snell did confirm what we suspected, that he has dropped weight. He came into the combine last year at 224 pounds. He's now down to 212, and so we're seeing a slimmer version of Benny Snell football in 2020. I think it's a great sign, Dave.
Absolutely it is, and he looks good, at least on camera, and the still shots and limited moving footage, moving pictures that we have of him so far. And he talked a little bit to the media a couple of days ago about what he thinks his role might be, and what came about him making the body change, body transformation, and saying the Steelers laid out a plan for him. He followed it, kind of situation here. So, look, this is just kind of the path that we kind of expected him to take. That most of these most recent second-year backs make. They get a good idea what the rigors of the NFL game are, how to be a professional in the NFL, how their body can make a big difference in the NFL, and following the plan. So, look, I mean, he's obviously going to, barring something happening to James Conner, going to start the season probably as the backup, primary feature backup, if you will, and then kind of go from there. But I mean, he's got to be ready at a moment's notice to be the man, if you will, especially when you look at Conner's history here, so injury history. So that's about all we have to work with right now. Once again, he's one of those guys that you would kind of like to see how that body, or how that weight loss would impact him, especially when it comes to runs with him on the edge,
Mm-hmm.
and does it does it really affect his? It really shouldn't affect his kind of his physicality, running between the tackles there. And I thought it was interesting that at one point, I think when talking to the running backs coach Faulkner, and then he was more of a get warmed up kind of running back in college, and that's one of the things I think I've highlighted since last season there when we're talking on the podcast is, man, it would have been great to see Benny Snell in some of these games get stuck with there. Let him get a couple carries, because in a couple of games where he did get a little bit of work, it did seem like he got stronger in the games. Didn't he have a couple of games like 90 something yards, one against the Bengals and I forget the
Chargers,
the Chargers or whatnot. And you go back and look at that. Maybe it was just not fully understanding, having a complete grasp of the offense, maybe. I don't know. But it would have been nice to see him in a little bit larger role in more games. And obviously, the knee injury that he went through, sat him down for 3 games. So that that obviously hampered him a little bit there and probably slowed his progression down a little bit. But yeah, look, I'm excited to see him. The thing is, we just don't know what his usage is going to be. You would think that coming out of the chute here, he would be at least a a couple of possession a game guy to maybe spell James Conner, right? Or at least one possession a game. And you would think because of his special teams ability, he would be out there running around in those situations as well. So, he's a guy that's easy to get excited about here right now.
Yeah, he's next man up. He's got that feature back mentality for one of the few teams in Pittsburgh that still really wants to have a featured back, a clear, defined number one runner that isn't really in a committee that is so in vogue in today's day and age. So yeah, good news for Snell and just following the same path as Le'Veon Bell, ask James Conner, Steelers draft their backs big and then ask them to slim down as opposed to try to get smaller guys to add weight. So Snell hopefully gets a little bit quicker, a little more burst, and probably helps out his conditioning as well to drop a little bit of weight. But just like the approach he takes, I just like the energy that this dude plays with. I mean, just even the Benny Snell football stuff, I know that kind of annoys some people, and I get that, but it's a guy that really just brings in energy, kind of a tone setter, and I love the way he embraced special teams last year, as to go from the big man on campus at Kentucky. When you're the guy, you help turn around that program. Now you get drafted in the NFL, and you're running down like kicks and punts. And he does that with a lot of enthusiasm, and he did it pretty well. He wasn't great, but he was pretty good at it last year for being a rookie that I'm guessing really has never run down kicks and punts before. So just like the way he approaches the game, the professionalism, losing weight, showing up in shape, staying on a plan, all really positive signs for Benny Snell.
I agree, and I think he's learned how to deal with the media too. I think
maybe tone thing down a little bit.
You're not in. You're not at Kentucky anymore. I think at one point, even last year, he said something along the lines of, "Man, the Kentucky media a lot more friendly than you guys," or something along those lines there, and very kind of measured, I thought, with what he said, the other day. But I have no qualms with that. And look, I mean, this is the same guy that talked. Funny when going back through some of these stats and all like that from last year, and writing about Benny Snell the other day, and Benny talking about how Ben Roethlisberger, the return of Roethlisberger, the impact, the obvious impacts he'll have on the offense. For all that Benny Snell played, the snaps that he played last season, he is still yet to be on the field with one Ben Roethlisberger on offense. And now obviously Ben Roethlisberger only played 6 quarters last year, but Benny wasn't on the field for any of those 6 quarters on offense. So he's still waiting to get that first handoff from Roethlisberger in a game. And if you remember back to, I think, a radio interview back in May, right after he was drafted and all like that, talking about how excited he was to play with Roethlisberger and get a handoff from Roethlisberger. Well, he's never got to experience any of that yet. So there's still that bit of excitement in there, that goes along with it. And I would think it wouldn't take him long into the 2020 season to maybe get that first handoff from one Ben Roethlisberger.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even realized that. I'll have to count how many times if it happened in training camp. But I think it will happen in week 1 against the Giants. Snell will get his wish.
And, when you even go back, you look at a guy like Deontay Johnson, I think, 20-something snaps, maybe Deontay Johnson was on the field with Roethlisberger last season and before he went down injured, and I maybe 2 or 3 targets, I think, in total. And I think one of those was a quick wide receiver screen over to the right side. I think maybe that was against New England in the opener there. So a lot, you got a lot of these young skill, and obviously Chase Claypool being new has yet to take an NFL snap with Roethlisberger there. So a lot of going to be a lot of first right out of shoot here, and obviously Eric Ebron new. So they're probably going to be a few little maybe kinks to have to work out of this offense, and that's probably why it's important to try to get some of these guys mixed in with Roethlisberger, the Claypools and then the Ebrons obviously go without saying there, mixed in as many offensive snaps as you can during live portions of camp practices here.
Right. As I mentioned in a previous episode of the podcast, Deontay Johnson caught 7 passes from Ben across training camp, preseason, and regular season combined. I think it was 2, remembering correctly, during the regular season. I believe both of those came against the Patriots. So a lot of newness there. That's why I'm glad that Ben's out there. He's healthy. He's throwing most every day. And I do want to circle back to just one broader point I have on Ben. We've heard so much from him, from teammates talking about how good he looks, from coaches talking about, Tomlin saying he's got that tighter spiral he was looking for. To me, Dave, I'm at the point where I've heard enough about Ben in terms of the positive news, and I think he's checked every single box that you could check at this point in his rehab. The only thing I'm focused on now is just how he performs, of course, in the regular season and how he does taking his first hit and all that. I don't think there's really anything else left for us to really discuss or for him to try to prove during the rest of this training camp and preseason, because I think he's really just answered every concern that anyone might have right now.
We go back to, do we have any reason to be worried? Coming off of surgery, other than the obvious, he had surgery, a major surgery, if you will. But has there been any other reasons for us to say to live in our fears here and say, oh man, I wonder, we haven't had the reason, and that's why I've been optimistic about him, because there have been, at least not that we have known about or come out of any other mouths of any other people, any setbacks. And really, I think in the long run, the whole pandemic thing and not having OTAs and those kind of things, maybe in the long run, that was kind of good for a guy like Roethlisberger. Now he's obviously was going to do his own thing on the side, at his house and his own workouts and all like that. But, he knows his body after all these years, and the speed that he should probably go at. But, to hear all these reports and what else is Switzer going to say? No, no zip on the ball whatsoever. Now, the good thing is now we said we were talking about Tomlin a couple weeks ago, or one of his first comments saying that he thinks his spiral could be a little bit tighter. Well, Tomlin has since come out and said, well, his spiral looks a little tighter. I wish my spiral looked a little bit tighter at times. And then you had Switzer come out and talk about his velocity the other day and say, hey, I tell you where you can really see it is on the tape. Those kind of things. And, not being there and not seeing the practice and all, we have to go by, some of these pool reports, and evidently the accuracy's there, yada, yada. So once again, we remain in the position of, until something negative comes out here, there's no reason to, I don't think, fret when it comes to this thing, So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you would think he would, and look, he's thrown, I tell you, probably the most surprising thing, at least from where I sit from watching this thing basically typed out in words, is he's back to back to back to back practices kind of thing. I kind of envision this being maybe practice a couple of days, get a day off. Maybe practice a couple of days, 3 days, get a day off. But I mean, there's it looks like there's been some stretches here. I mean, hasn't been many days where he hasn't thrown, right?
Well, he alluded to before camp he thought he was going to do his regular camp schedule of full day, half day, off day. I think he's been a couple of half days in there, but he's basically been throwing every day, very few off days, which is great. Again, it sounds like he's healthy, he feels good, there's no pain or discomfort after throwing and exerting himself. So yeah, like I said, he's checked every box. So I'm sure he'll continue to get asked about it. Players will get asked about it. How does Ben look? How does Ben feel? But I just kind of go, I got it. Ben looks good, and the only thing left to find out now is how he does in the regular season.
Absolutely.
So really good news there. Other players and coaches who have spoken to the media, Dave, we've already found the best part of Pittsburgh Steelers 2020 training camp. Danny Smith graced us with his presence, talked to the media. He looked good. I was happy to hear Danny Smith talked about how he did not consider opting out despite being a little higher risk. He says he's been called a lot of names in this business, but house cat isn't one of them. And how do you not love Danny Smith?
Sounds like something my old grandpa would used to say there and all. But no hobbies, and I know you didn't get the reference there. Danny Smith's got nowhere else to go. That's from the old Officer and a Gentleman movie there, a classic movie. I guess, I guess that would have been in the 80s, I think there.
The Officer and the Gentleman sounds like a movie that doesn't have sound in it. like 1920.
It's actually a great movie. Richard Gere plays the lead part in there, and I'm trying to remember who the drill sergeant is. Kind of a military based kind of this guy that this rough edge guy goes into the military to try to straighten his life out and becomes a military officer, and all the things that go along with his path of not quitting, and they try to get him to quit during boot camp and all like that. I think a little bit of a love story mixed in there also. I think you'd probably enjoy it. It's another one of those that you'd have to add to your list there. It was a classic movie back at the time. Ask anybody of older than you about The Officer and a Gentleman. But there's this one scene where they're trying to get the lead character Richard Gere to basically drop out of boot camp, and he's in the mud and muck and all like that, and he's crying. He says, "I got nowhere else to go," and that's what I kind of take Danny Smith as. He's got nowhere else to go. He's one of those guys that's going to coach until they tell him he can't coach anymore. But what were some of the main takeaways once we get out of the pop culture section of this? Now, what are some of the main takeaways that you got from Danny Smith?
Danny Smith says he's got plans.
Oh, there we go.
Watt. I love the line there about Watt saying, make sure the roster, okay, no roster move. I got a Steelers update, but it was not on a roster move. Anyway, Danny Smith says he's a Watt. His mom and dad ought to be writing books. We all ought to be reading it. And just talking about how obviously when you lose Tyler Medikevich, you bring in Derek Watt, who tied Tyler Medikevich with, I believe, 16, 17 special teams tackles a year ago. So that's a pretty good way to compensate for losing one of your core guys in Dirty Red.
Absolutely. And boy, when I was writing that one up and talking about what he had said about Watt, and you go back through and you look at the core special teamers that this team lost, this past offseason, look, Johnny Holton was no loss as a wide receiver, but he was a pretty decent gunner, right?
He was a really good gunner.
And if that's what kept him probably. That's what allowed him to be on the 53 not long after the season started there. Now you hopefully have replaced him for at least the first half of the season with a guy like Chase Claypool, right? Because in fact, I think Danny Smith kind of tying into comments here said, y'all keep on pumping up Chase Claypool as a wide receiver. Maybe people won't pay attention to his special teams play. That speaks volumes right there, to me. And if there's one thing that you and I have talked about, I think that I did in my kind of game by game breakdown of him of last season, Chase Claypool can get down the field and make a difference as a gunner on special teams. So we know that's at least one core special teamer, at least at the start of the season, that Danny Smith's been able to replace Johnny Holton as a gunner with Chase Claypool. Who else had lost? Tyler Medikevich was your leading, was a core guy, was your leading tackler. You've essentially now replaced him, or you haven't placed him, no essentially to it, with a guy like Derek Watt, right? I mean, this is a 4-phase. Every aspect of it, you put him out there. This is a guy that's probably going to lead your team, or at least hopefully lead your team in special teams tackles. This is a guy that could potentially be your special teams captain. Even that probably wouldn't be too surprising there. And who else have you lost?
Nix and Chicolo.
Right, and Nix, let's counterbalance the Chicolo loss there. You got a guy in Robert Spillane who really once he got promoted back, really did well on special teams. And so Robert Spillane is one guy. You got a returning, the guy that really you essentially replaced Spillane with, Ulysees Gilbert. So those two combined, should help you cover the Knicks Chicolo aspect of it there. So I think, in so many words, they about got it covered there.
Yeah, I view it like this: that Claypool replaces Holton, Watt replaces Nix, Spillane semi-replaces Medikevich, and Gilbert replaces Chicolo. And that's kind of the one-to-one way I think about it. So it's good to have that continuity to that extent, because as Danny Smith was asked about, how concerned are you that you can't replicate this stuff, that there is no preseason to have these guys go out there and get a better sense of what they can do. And Danny Smith, said that expectations are still high and they're going to do the best they can in camp to try to simulate things, and that he does not expect the beginning of the year to be sloppy, and you want to keep those standards high. So that is the area of this team where there is some roster turnover, special teams, and that's an area where every team's going to have this challenge of just trying to figure out what they have when you just can't really get a good sense of it during the summer months without a preseason.
There still should be a lot of familiarity, though, for Danny Smith. We talked about Gilbert. We talked about Spillane. We expect those two guys to make it. Obviously, probably not 4-phase, but a couple of phases. Guys like Ola, who's our skipper potentially. At least those guys have been, have played spots on special teams. Kind of being returning guys, if you will. Claypool's obviously new, but I view him really, outside of Gunner. What's he going to be on, your kick coverage team and maybe your kick return team? Maybe.
Probably not on kick return, but definitely kick coverage and definitely gunner.
So kind of limited. You could work him in slowly, I guess. What I'm saying on that, and it's not like gunner is a new position for him there. Where once again we got a transaction here now. The Steelers have signed Ray-Ray McCloud and have released Saheed Blacknall.
Oh, Blacknall got cut. He was moved in my camp sleeper, but I get it. It would have been a tough path without a preseason for him.
Yeah, it was going to be a tough path for Blacknall for sure, and I don't think it says in the release here whether or not Blacknall was waived injured or not. Are you seeing anything on that? I'm not seeing where he was waived injured there, so we'll have to wait and see what the official NFL sheet says on Blacknall, if he just flat out cut or if he was a waived injured situation or what. But that Ray-Ray McCloud move is now made official like we thought it would be after it was reported on Thursday. Thursday felt like Saturday or Sunday for some reason there. But anyway, that's the move. At least it was about as expected or hoped, I guess.
Yeah, Steelers are just coining it released Saheed Blacknall, so we'll get further confirmation when the official NFL sheet comes out at 4 p.m. today. But yeah, it was a vertical threat, someone that was a feast or famine, low volume, but big play kind of guy at Penn State. And really every step, he was in Oakland. I think he was in the XFL earlier this year and made a couple of big plays there. But just a tough path for all those young receivers to try to make it in a pretty crowded room.
Yeah, a guy that was even on, I think on my initial one, he was the guy that on the first 53-man roster that I had way back that I had since replaced with Ryan Switzer. I think I had Blacknall making a 53 their way back in May or whenever there. But all right, moving forward, we was talking about special teams and Danny Smith. Where were we?
Yeah, I think we were just basically wrapping it up, just talking about, that there is decent continuity there. I mean, some of the replacing faces of Derek Watt, obviously he's an NFL veteran, and Claypool, as you said. The thing about to touch on him with Chase Claypool is that special teams is so much about buy-in and 1-2, and it's the dirty work and it's gritty, and not a lot of guys like it. But Chase Claypool seems to really love special teams. Like he asked the coaches, and they obliged to keep him as a gunner last year at Notre Dame, even though he was the number one wide receiver. So I think that speaks to a love of that element of the game, certainly competency of that element of the game, and a conditioning of that element of the game, that you are literally a 4-down player to play offense and then run down punch after your offensive series. So I think that speaks to a guy that is pretty ready for the NFL.
Absolutely. So once again, I think the good thing, the familiarity factor when it comes to some of these guys we just mentioned, and on top of it, it's going to make. It goes without saying, regardless, special teams or not, it's going to be hard for a lot of these younger undrafted guys to help out to make a mark in that area, because they don't have any preseason games to do it. In the past, we've seen guys like Rosie Nix really shine in a last preseason game. Go back even 7 more years, a guy like Stephon Logan. Guys that be able to help themselves on special teams during preseason games, that it's just so hard to make an impact, you would think, during these practices and catch the eye of Danny Smith.
It will be, for sure. Really feel for those guys. The one concern, though, is while we talk about some of the individual faces, obviously special teams is not about individuals. It's a unit. As Danny Smith always says, it is a unit that has to come together and work in tandem. And so some of that newness still, guys haven't played with each other, haven't just played in a while, haven't run down a punt in, 8 months, 9 months by the time you actually get out there and do it. That is just some of the concern, where you just haven't gotten to really work as a group together to really gel. And that is the worry on special teams.
Right.
Especially on kick return, where the team's been abysmal, because kick return is so much about timing of it, where it just kind of has to work in a rhythm and a flow that has not been there for years, and it's not going to get better in an environment like this. You just kind of hope the other team screws it up right now with their newness, and that's how you might get some success there. But anyway, that's enough from Danny Smith.
Well, at least Danny did say, though, all these two, everybody's on the same playing ground here. So he says that's one of the beauties about the NFL is everybody deals with the same set of circumstances there. So, how great would it be to come out and shoot with, a couple big plays on special teams, to make a difference in or at least be some difference makers in some of these early games here, whether it be a 40-something yard return, or whether it be a forced fumble, or you know what I'm getting at there. Little sure. Things like that, because of lack of. Yeah, either you're going to be on the screws or you're not, more than likely there. So you could see special teams play be a turning point in one of these early games.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that, and absolutely, that's an issue that every team has to deal with. They're all rowing the same boat right now, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. Because again, this is uncharted waters for, as you said, every single team. All right, Vance Mcdonald also spoke to the media. He's talking up Eric Ebron. Kind of an interesting comment. He was just talking about how Ebron was like the missing piece and how his production is going to go up because Ebron's there. I'm not entirely sure what he was getting at. I guess the obvious of just having another weapon on the field opens up options for other guys. But either way, he's excited for Eric Ebron to be alongside with him as the number 2 tight end.
Boy, we're supposed to see a lot of, we're supposed to see a lot of 11 personnel. We're supposed to see a lot of 4 or 5 receiver sets. We're supposed to see a lot of 2 tight end personnel groupings. That Matt Canada must be an illusionist, man. How are they going to do all this, Alex?
And to get us some penalty flags for too many men on the field, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, how we keep hearing this 2 tight end thing. We keep hearing, everybody's saying, well, look how they're going to get Chase Claypool on the field a lot. Something's got to give here, right?
Yeah, with the 2 tight end stuff, I think it's been the whole conversation just overblown. Like this is some sort of newfangled thing the Steelers have never done before.
That wouldn't happen with the media or
No,
the fan base.
Never.
No, nothing's going to get overblown.
Right. I'll have to go back and check what the snap count is out of 12 personnel the last few years, but I imagine it's around 200 and 250, and I bet you that's about where it's going to be this year, especially it's hard to imagine both guys being healthy for all 16 games. So it's not going to be anything significantly more. It won't be significantly less. Obviously, you have really talented guy in Ebron, and hopefully Vance bounces back. So they're going to get everybody involved. It'll be all pieced together. So this 12 personnel thing has just taken a life of its own that is a little weird.
Hey, I have talked for years and years, especially on this podcast, about, boy, it'd be nice to see them see a Steelers team get a kind of a move tight end and be able to dictate a lot of things offensively with that. But within that, you got to be able to run out of it, man. And that, look, I will be feigning if they have Ebron and McDonald on the field extensively right from the start, and they're able to run out of 12 personnel. I'll believe it when I see it. And some of the kind of the tidbits have been floating around. Some of these media guys coming out of camp so far is Ebron and that sled haven't really done not getting along too well, from what I understand. So look, you got to be able to run out of it. And look, if there's one thing that I'm tired of the last couple years is seeing this tackle eligible stuff, because it just limits you so much. I think you're almost screaming when the tackle eligible comes in, Zach Banner or whoever that you're going to run. Or if you're going to pass, don't worry about Banner if he goes out into a route, kind of situation there. It would be nice to be able to have, to see more two tight end situations and then be able to do both out of them. But in order to be able to pass effectively out of that, you got to be able to run out of it. And I think James Daniel said as much during his talk with the media recently as well too. So once again, we've heard a lot about going to be able to maybe use two tight ends in this offense and all. I'm going to have to see it, to believe it, especially when it comes to the running aspect of it.
Right. I mean, they're going to do it. I mean, we both agree that you're going to see, standard 12 personnel.
What I want to see is a success. I know. Sure. I know we'll see it. I want to see the success with it.
Yeah, I think you have to be just creative in how you kind of try to maximize Ebron's strengths and minimize his weaknesses, and that's a very cliche thing to say, but the Colts did that. Ebron, he did line up as an inline tight end for the Colts. He just didn't have to base block a D end or an outside linebacker. He was going to the second level to try to pick off a will on kind of a reach block, or go to the third level with a safety he was climbing towards. So you just want to be smart and creative about it, and obviously, hopefully, Vance has shown he can be a good blocker. He just wasn't last year, and I'm not sure if that was health or declining player. We'll find out this year pretty quickly, but ideally, if you can have Ebron as more your move slot, tight end that gets displaced to walk a linebacker out, and Vance can stay in to be the inline blocker, then that's ideal. But they'll find a way, and hopefully Matt Canada will be more creative this year and just trying to create some different matchups, because there is definitely an advantage to having an athletic tight end like Ebron that can really create a mismatch for an offense when the defense has to stay in base, and now they're rotating either a safety down, forcing them to play single high, limits them coverage wise, or they're gonna have a linebacker on them now, and now you got a pretty tasty matchup for Ebron to take advantage of. So if you use it correctly, I mean, this thing should be successful. We'll see if they do.
Now I admit I am old school in nature sometimes, so I expect I come from the school of really liking my tight ends to be able to block. Now, within that, I try to keep my mind open to a lot of things other than that. And if you go back to some of the old Belichick notes that surface the internet these days, I think we both put a lot of stock in what Belichick thinks. He's some of his notes on a tight end position. Going back, don't let the lack of blocking ability eliminate a good player. Those are just some of the notes that he has in there. Wanting to find a pass catcher at the position is more important than finding a blocker. So he'd much rather want a tight end that can that maybe you occasionally line up on the end of the line of scrimmage that maybe can just work as a washout guy, guy that just pushes left or pushes right, not so much line him up on one-on-one on a defensive end and expect him to handle him, like we hear Mike Tomlin talk about it sometimes. So if that's don't put Ebron in situations where you expecting him to manhandle a guy on the edge is all.
Mm-hmm. Angles and leverage will be the key in how they design things, and also just running away from him too. Let him be the backside, maybe run weak side more with Ebron on the field. But angles and leverage and just letting him down block, as you said, or wash a guy is the way to go to kind of handle some of his lackluster run blocking.
And let's admit it, the days, you just don't find those kind of, those George Kittles are rare nowadays, right? So It is asking a little bit much. Now, maybe they do something along the lines of, that two tight end grouping, maybe not all the time, including both Ebron and McDonald. Maybe it's a combination of, I don't know, Gentry and somebody. But Gentry's blocking, as we saw last year, is now supposedly, what little bit we're getting, maybe it's improved a little bit here, but he had room for a lot of improvement when it comes to that and that aspect of it. So, would you carry a guy who is the Kevin Radar perhaps your best blocking tight end on your roster right now? And if so, would that could there be a reason special teams wise on top of it to carry 4 tight ends and maybe just 5 wide receivers,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think Raiders are a good blocking tight end. He may be the second best. I still like to think Vance is a little bit better, at least because we've seen him do it on Sundays, and Raiders looks decent at a preseason against 3rd and 4th string, probably different versus starters. I think Raider will make the practice squad, and if you're really unhappy with the production you're getting, maybe you make a move in season, but I don't think he's going to make a serious push for the 53.
Is there any way, if he stays healthy, that Gentry does not make this 53?
It's really hard to imagine it. I know that James Daniel was talking about that and saying we're framing it as a competition, which is all good and healthy to do for a bunch of those young guys. You don't want to feel like Gentry has earned that job because he hasn't, but I really can't see it. And
in all reality, we just don't know that much about Gentry at this point, outside of his college tape still, right?
Yeah, 50 snaps last year, and pretty uneventful 50 snaps.
And a couple of them weren't pretty. I think a bulk of them came in that game against the 49ers early in the season, too. And, boy, that'll make you cringe watching some snaps in there. Now, he did progress as the year went on. He just didn't get the playing time, much more outside of that 49ers game.
The last thing I'll say with the tight ends is that they got to stop trying to compare this group to Heath Miller and Matt Spaeth. I think Daniel said it again.
Yeah.
Like, this is furthest from era and just style. Like, I guess in an overall point of just saying like we have 2 good tight ends, but I cannot think of 2 different guys of Heath Miller and Matt Spaeth and like Vance Mcdonald and Eric Ebron.
Yeah, that goes back to my old school stuff, man. I don't think unless with cyclical NFL, maybe it comes back at some point, right? But
not today. Not with these 2.
Not nowhere close to that right now. Yeah, and look, Spaeth wasn't all that as a receiver, right? But boy, he could. He was the Mackey Award winner when he came out and all, and that was I think look, he was a great. He was an underrated blocking tight end in the NFL. People just looked at him more of because he didn't light up the stat sheet, but boy, he could block, especially middle of his career. Matt Spaeth was perhaps one of the top blocking tight ends in the NFL for a period there.
Yeah, he was a big dude, but just total polar opposite than Eric Ebron. Totally different skill sets. But anything else from what any players or coaches have said over the past week you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we got a lot of it, didn't we? Switzer, just talking a lot about Ben and all. But I think we've covered a lot of it, right?
Yeah, I think so too, Dave. You had written an article yesterday for Steelers Depot talking about the 10 biggest cap hits for 2021 and maybe some potential cap casualties on that list, knowing that cap crunch coming up.
What did you think about the overall? What was your overall takeaway from that?
I just looked at Vince Williams at that number 10 spot in terms of the cap hit and went, man, as much as I like Vince Williams, as much as I think that some fans underrate him, especially his coverage ability, how do you make it work for next year?
We'll go that through them quickly, and I'll get your thoughts on each one. Ben Roethlisberger and that $41.25 million cap charge. He's going to be back in 2021. We both agree on that, right? I mean, it would take something really weird, catastrophic like for Ben not to be back in 2021. The question is what do you do? Your overall arching thoughts on Ben is I would think is that he's not going to play at a 41.25 cap number. So they'll do something, you would think. What that something is, though, they got plenty of time to figure out. Is that kind of your takeaway? Or is your takeaway Ben's probably going to play at a 41.25 cap number?
I mean, you've obviously thought about it a lot more than I have. I think it makes sense to do something with that. My focus is just on the here and now of getting him through this year, making sure he feels good and wants to play in 2021, which I assume he will, but I think that's a good problem to have if we're having that conversation this time in a couple months from now.
Right. And February, late February, early March is when something probably needs to happen there. Okay, whether it be a faux extension, whatever. I'll lay out all in a future post. I'll lay out all the options that they have on there. But my main takeaway, especially after Ben Roethlisberger talked a couple of weeks, upon arriving to camp, is something's going to happen where he's not going to play at the 41.25 number. Some sort of an extension or something to lower that thing, I think is going to happen there with him. Obviously, and look, the most amount of money you're able to save there is $14.34 million. I don't think it's going to be that extreme. It's not impossible, but that's the best case scenario with him. But moving on from him, Joe Hayden. I think it's, you want to talk about a guy that's hard to predict when it comes to 2021. I think it's him, Alex. I mean, he's got the second highest scheduled cap hit in 2021 at $15.575 million. That's double what he's scheduled to make for a salary at $7 million. We're going to learn a lot about Joe Hayden as the season progresses. Obviously, if he has another good season, it's hard to envision cutting ties with him at a $7 million salary, right? So do you let him play out that final year and or do you extend a guy at his age? It's kind of hard to make an argument to extend him, right?
Yeah, that is tough to do. But in terms of cutting him, that might be even harder to do because you're losing at least one of Mike Hilton, Cam Sutton, and you're going to add Joe Hayden to that pile with potentially zero snap Justin Lane filling his shoes. What do you do there? So it's hard to see a scenario where obviously your roster's not getting better if you're cutting Joe Hayden.
Right. I mean, I think you just kind of let him. I think you either let him play it out. In other words, I don't think there's going to be an extension there. I think you're going to come to the decision of either you need to cut him and save that $7 million, or you just need to let him play.
Yeah, I'm with you. That makes sense.
That's really, I think, your only two options there. Now, there's nothing that says that he can't maybe help you out and do some sort of faux extension as well too, with some voidable years or whatnot. But I really just don't see that. I mean, for what you would save to have to go through that rigmarole, I just don't see it. But he is tough to predict just because of his age and some of the other things going on in there. But he is your second highest cap hit in 2021 as we sit here right now. And we're going to learn a lot about what's going to happen or be able to speculate easier about what's going to happen with him as the season progresses. You agree?
Yes, I do.
All right, Stephon Tuitt. Tuitt, look, here's the thing. Are they going to have to restructure him in the next 3.5 weeks? We'll see. Regardless, it's hard to imagine Tuitt not being a Steeler in 2021. You just don't save that much. You save like $3 million by cutting him, assuming he does not have his contract restructured here in the next few weeks, and he would have to be he would have to go through another bad injury again or really, really suck bad in 2020 to cut him. So, him still being under contract through the 2022 season, probably a little bit, at least by Steelers standards, they don't extend people two years out like that. So he's probably a guy that more than anything, I think the most likely outcome for Tuitt next March would be to restructure his contract. And that assumes that you didn't restructure it this year. And in restructuring him in March, you would free up that $4 million could be put to use that you save via restructure. So do you foresee a restructure being the most likely outcome for him in March?
I hope so. It means that he stayed healthy, had a good year. And yeah, I think you're going to have to basically flip over every couch cushion to squeeze every dollar you can get out of your cap space for next year. So I think that one makes a lot of sense.
All right, Marquis Bounces, next one on the list at $14.475 million cap number, even though he's only scheduled to earn an $8 million salary.
You're seeing a theme here.
Yeah, there are a lot of big cans that got kicked down the old highway. What do you do with him? Alex, is he tied to Roethlisberger? If Roethlisberger signs an extension, is Pouncey going to sign a 2-year extension? Do you just let him play it out? What are your early thoughts on what might happen to Pouncey come the start of the new league year?
Yeah, I know that obviously Ben and Pouncey are so tied at the hip, and they've always talked about going out together. I don't think that just because Ben gets an extension means that Pouncey's going to get one too, at least immediately. So leaning more towards is just playing that situation out. So
just let him ride at the $14.475 million and maybe have a drafted center there right behind him, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, potentially. And there's no way you could do any sort of restructure or anything with that, right?
No, final year of his contract. Okay. So unless he did a faux extension, unless there was something super creative going on, you're going to be lucky to get Ben to do a super creative type situation. Mm-hmm. I think it's a bit much to ask a couple of these guys to take no new money, Yeah,
probably just not worth it with the money. You're not going to save that much money, I imagine, anyway, with a guy like Pouncey. So yeah, probably doing nothing with him.
Right. To me, it's either going to be nothing or maybe a 2-year extension with him. But even there, you're not going to, because of past kicking, there's not all that much salary cap space to save via an extension if you're going to pay him a fair market value on top of it.
Right. His team's, what's the old saying? Trying to squeeze blood out of a rock or something. That's what his team's trying to do right now.
Next guy on the list, Steven Nelson, $14.42 million cap charge there, but is just 27 years of age, coming off a particularly good 2018 season. If there's one guy that's ripe for a contract extension next offseason, it might be Steven Nelson, right?
Yeah, you're saying that could create $3 to $4 million in cap space?
Possibly fair market value, because look, he's probably if he has a better season than he had 2019, and that would mean a couple more turnovers, right? Mean him playing the same level plus adding a few more turnovers on top of it. This guy's going to want to be paid easily top 15 cornerback in the league, you would think, right?
Yeah. Where's he at right now? Top 20 or something? Because I thought he was already top 15, but I guess I'm mistaken. I haven't looked at it in a while.
Let's see. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, he is right at number 20.
Okay. Yeah. Then you expect him to be bumped up again because he played really well last year. If he does it again, then he's going to want big money. I
mean, he's going to at least want in that top 15 range, right? So you're talking about maybe probably at least 13 million average yearly value,
Okay.
You think that's something the Steelers would entertain? Once again, it's going to depend how he plays, right?
Mm-hmm. But assuming your premise of another really good year, yeah, I think they would entertain that.
All right, and such an extension could maybe free. I haven't gotten deep into the numbers, obviously, but maybe could help you out, free up maybe $3 million or so in 2021 there. But it's hard to envision him not being on this roster, right?
Correct.
All right, David Castro, guy we've already talked a little bit about. we'll see what's going to happen with him in the next 3 weeks. Probably a restructure, you would think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what's going to happen next offseason? He, along with Nelson, would be a prime candidate for an extension to free up a couple million, possibly.
Yeah, I think he's one of the top guys. So is it either or? Could they do restructure this year and then extension next year? Or is it one or the other?
No, they could do both, but
is it worth it to do both? Does it make sense to do both?
You're not going to save much, it is worth it to do both because you're freeing up you're restructuring to Castro just to have some in-season workspace with.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you're carrying a good chunk of that over with.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you're restructuring him in these next few weeks for break glass in case of emergency situation, and hopefully you don't get to that. Some of that freed up money might go back to him anyway. For accounting purpose wise, you would think there. So regardless, it's hard to imagine. I think the Castro and Nelson are the two guys, along with obviously the next guy on the list, TJ Watt, that you're looking at possible extensions on.
Yeah, no, I think the Castro are going to do a lot with him. There's a lot of billable hours Omar Khan's filing to the Steelers in the next year.
Where's mine? I got to get on that list somehow. I got a lot of billable hours in this thing. Yeah. T.J. Watt, obviously, he's scheduled to count $10 million against the cap in 2011. That's because of his fifth-year option being picked up there. The thing is if you get into a situation where this guy becomes the highest-paid defensive player in the league at a $30 million average, or right up or knocking on the $30 million door, it's going to be tough to bring that cap number down.
Yeah, it will. It will.
Because of the first year money that you're going to have to give them, the bonus money, yada, yada. So I think at best case scenario, you're looking at Watt carrying at least that 10 million number, maybe a couple million higher. So that's something else that you got to plan for there. And such an extension with him, though, probably isn't going to take place until maybe the same time next year. Would you agree?
I'd agree.
Is there any way whatsoever that you don't extend Watt next offseason and you try to get him to play out that $10 million year?
No, Dave. I think the odds are really, really high that Watt gets an extension next summer.
Yeah, I know some people are saying, well, what if you get in a situation, cap crunch, blah, blah, blah. No way if I'm Watt do I let myself play for $10 million in 2021. All right, closing down this list. Eric, the next two on the list are both tight ends, Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald. Call me crazy. Okay, well, I know you do anyway, but I think it's almost certain one of these guys is jettisoned before the start of the new league year in March, or has to take a huge pay cut. And I think there's an outside chance that both of them might be gone. And I know that's black. I know people are probably saying you got to be crazy. They just Eric Ebron's this, that, and the, but if Eric Ebron's only a 30 reception guy, doesn't do much in the blocking end of things, is he going to be worth that $6 million he's going to be scheduled to earn in 2021? So I think there's a good chance one of these guys are gone, and I would not be. I think people need to allow for the chance that both these guys being gone.
Well, you answered my question that I was going to ask, so let me ask you this one: who is more likely to return next year, Ebron or McDonald?
I would think Ebron would be the most likely to return,
based on just talent.
Pedigree, what he brings you in the passing game, blah, 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 even though McDonald might be the better all around. Yeah. We'll see. Look, here's the thing. McDonald, is going to have to stay healthy this year. End of story. None of this 13 game stuff. He's going to have to play 16 games. And he's going to have to be back to being kind of the blocker that he was a couple years when he first arrived and all. I'm not discounting the point that McDonald might be the one that stays, but he's going to have, it's going to be one of those things. He's going to have to earn it. but even so, is he going to be the type of guy that you go to again and say, look, you got to take a nut, because he kind of helped him out a little bit this offseason. It seemed like they might have been ready to let him go this offseason if he didn't rework his deal a little bit there, right? So, I mean, I think there is a chance that an outside chance that both these guys are gone. But if I had to lean to which one's more likely to stay right now, I think Ebron.
Yeah. Well, with Vance, I mean, he's only missed 3 games in the last 2 years. It's kind of crazy to think about, but he hasn't looked healthy when he's been out there. So that's the thing with him, is he's been available, just hasn't always felt like he's been out anywhere close to 100%. So it could go either way at this point. We'll see.
What does Ebron need to do in order to stay at a $6 million number? Could Ebron do something that makes you want to extend him next offseason?
That's a good point.
I mean, I haven't really
doubt it.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it. I mean, there's not much to save, really, I don't think, overall there. He really would have to light it on fire, I think. But even so, what kind of money would he be looking up for on an extension,
right.
When it comes
especially
to that.
And his tight end market just spiked, obviously, with the Kittle deal, and Zach Ertz is going to get paid, and Travis Kelce just got paid, even though the deal's kind of weird. To answer your question, yeah, Ebron just make plays in the red zone. I don't know, catch at least 5 touchdowns, probably keeps him around another year.
What percent chance would you give it that, because look, you could use that money, right? I mean, you're talking about what's the total on both these guys here? Ebron, you would save $6 million. I think Vance is something like 5.2 or something that you would save.
Yeah, so you're getting around 11.
I mean, that's a team that's going to be up against it. That's that's a little bit of money there.
So you're asking the odds that both are gone?
Right. What are the odds that? I mean, obviously, you would probably be in the 90% realm that one of them's gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, up there, but much more likely than not. I don't know the exact percent in terms of both being gone. Be in that 15 to 20% range, where it would not shock me. I think it's unlikely at this point because you're gutting your tight end room with no future up and comer. But I think it is possible. So 15, 20%.
Maybe you go out and you get into free agency, a bottom rung tight end, and draft another one. Obviously,
it'd be nice if they drafted one. They're making that drum for a Kyle Pitts guy from Florida and the kid from Penn State.
Yeah, the Penn State kids. I haven't watched a lot on him, but I know a lot of people are talking about him as well too. And hopefully, if the Steelers are picking late because they maybe want that's usually the type spot that you get one of those top tier tight ends, right? Kind of thing there. But I like the odds. Like I said, I like the odds of one of those guys not being back in 2021, and I just think people need to be prepared for both of them not to be back.
Another guy that might be gone. I'll let you lead this one off. Vince Williams.
Yeah. I mean, look, I like Vince. I mean, hard worker. I mean, what is there not to not like about him? But other than his 2021 salary, that's $4 million. Now, could you go to Williams after this season and say, look, what's free agency going to be out there? What's it going to look like for you out on the street? Thanks to this cap situation and being the age that you're going to be and all, would you be willing to go down to a minimum salary of just over $1 million to stay?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, if he starts this year, he will start this year. If he plays 600 some snaps, and I think he'll play at a pretty good level, to ask him to do that kind of feels, I get it, but it feels like an insult.
Right. So, but is he going to be worth $4 million on your roster next season?
Yeah, I think you just have to see where you're at cap-wise after. If you do something with Ben, you do an extension with the Castro, maybe someone else you do something with, whatever other cuts you might have. I mean, I think it's possible. I'm certainly not saying that it's guaranteed Vince will be back. I think he's very much up in the air, but I think you try to avoid it if you can.
All right. Of these 10 players, how many are going to be what's the maximum amount of them to be cap casualties? I think there's an outside chance Hayden's a cap casualty. Would you agree? Just a slim chance?
I mean, what percent are we talking slim? Like 10% slim?
Yeah, I'd say 10% chance.
I'd go lower. I mean, I think maybe like 2-3%.
Okay. But we're in agreement that there is an outside chance.
I mean, yeah, if he struggles with injuries and just doesn't seem to play well, and Justin Lane takes over and were to play well, then that's the only scenario I could see that playing out.
Ebron and McDonald both have some percentage chance of being cap casualties, as does Williams. So I think at max, and really Joe Hayden would have to go south in a hurry. The max for these guys or for these 10 are cap casualties. Realistically, probably 2, right?
Probably a tight end, and Vince has certainly a good chance to be cut.
Now, when you get into all, looking at this and finagling and extension and all like that, you can trim some money in a hurry, man. And you talk about this team being already looking at 20-something million over the cap as it sits right now. They can depend on, and I can carve out about $18 million for you real quick, and that's not even taking into account what's going to happen with Ben.
Right, because you would just be releasing a tight end, Vince, extending the Castro
and Nelson,
and then you have Ben. That probably puts you. What's the rough savings on all of those things? 30.
Maybe not that high, but
when you said 18, you said you got to 18 before Ben.
Yeah, but I mean, how much you going to save on Ben realistically? And then here's the other thing that you have to think about is what happens. What this does not take into account is you haven't done anything with Cameron Hayward yet. So, you'd have to do if Hayward gets extended here in these next few weeks, you're going to have to turn around and restructure him to lower his number by 10 million, whatever his number is, and that's going to put another 10 million charge on top of it just because you're having to lower a number. So really, whatever you save with Ben probably helps you afford Hayward, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see, but definitely, like I said, we know that it's going to be a crazy offseason. A lot of moves will be made, and the roster's going to look a whole lot different this time next year.
All right, that was a fun little exercise. With that, let's get to the let's get to some reader email. You got anything else to add about all that?
No, that was everything.
All right, let's get here to Todd Gensler writes in, "Hello, fellows. Thanks as always for your work and insight. It sure makes it easy to keep track of everything by listening to you." Thank you for that, Todd. Do you think I've been getting a lot of questions about Juju? Do you think the Steelers may be looking to trade Juju at any point this season? With the addition of Ray-Ray McCloud and it appearing to be very unlikely that the team can re-sign Juju after the season, is it a possibility? Even if that's totally out of question, just for kicks, what would you expect to get for him? The wide receiver room is very deep on the Steelers roster, so the McCloud signing seems peculiar to me. Let me start this, Todd. I would not read anything into the McCloud signing. I think at best here he's a practice squad guy, barring some injuries taking place. As far as Juju goes, I think we answer that question with a question. What do you gain by trading Juju?
Yeah, in terms of what you could get, I mean, on an expiring contract for somebody that, of course, is going to get paid this offseason, assuming he plays well. I don't know, you may be looking at a third rounder or something like that. But I think more to the point, you're in win now mode, because we've just outlined how much different and how much roster turnover you're likely to have after this season. So you are in win now mode. You're not going to be taking away one of your best weapons when you're in that, having that mentality.
Any team trading for Juju right now on top of it would have to give up at a minimum a third round pick, you would think, at a minimum. And B, that team would have to already be prepared to turn around and place the franchise tag on Juju, you would think, because he'd be silly to sign a lower market value deal ahead of that, because knowing a team would have to place the franchise tag on him on top of it. So I don't see what a team gains outside of having the player for a possible 1-year rental for trading for Juju and giving up a third round pick. And I don't see what the Steelers gain by trading Juju away, because look, you expect him to bounce back. And if you bounce back, you're looking at a 1,000-yard season. And if you let him walk, you're going to hopefully recoup a third round compensatory draft pick value the year later on top of it there. So And you already heard Mike Tomlin talk the other day about this guy's elite, a guy that these younger players can lean on. I don't see any way. Now, maybe if you're out of it come trade deadline, but even so, I mean, what are you going to get for Juju at that point? Is team going to be willing to give up, I just don't see what you gain at any point of trading Juju right now, even though it looks like you're not going to be able to retain him during the offseason.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can't really see a scenario where that realistically happens.
All right. Anything to add on that?
No, I think, I just can't see it happen again. I'm with you. Ray-Ray McCloud does nothing remotely to touch Juju's situation.
Let's see here. Jay Barbati writes in, Chase Claypool over under 2.5 combined forced fumbles and recoveries on special teams. Look, he's a good special teams player, especially a gunner. But I think I'd have to take the under 2.5 combined forced fumbles and recoveries his rookie season still.
Yeah, under. One of each, though, would be nice. That's a good goal to shoot for.
Let's see. Do you think he could develop into an X receiver? I really like his agility and awareness. I don't think he's that twitchy of a guy to be an X. I view him as a big slot and a guy that can play outside, maybe occasionally in some Z.
Yeah, I see Z. Probably Z more realistically than anywhere else, to be honest, but maybe some slot work too once I get eyes on him this year, assuming we see him a little bit in that role. I mean, X, in the Steelers definition of it, the X receiver, the AB, Deontay Johnson, Claypool probably doesn't really fit there. So he's probably in this system. In some systems, he could be an X maybe, but in this one, I probably see him more as a Z slot type.
I agree, and I think next year you get into a situation where, he knows the X, and maybe occasionally play a snap or so there. But I don't view him as that being his primary role in the NFL. He just doesn't have.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He just doesn't have those traits.
I can see some X and some red zone stuff where you just either the safety has to go bracket him and now you draw him away, or he's one-on-one with a corner and now you can throw a jump ball or a slant or something to him. That'd be maybe his role for the X. Sure,
because he can use that big body on a quick, quick inside post, skinny post.
Yeah, or even a slant. Yeah, get the inside leverage, and he's going to box that dude out.
All right, he writes in, is Tyson Alualu going to need to put on weight for the position change? How much 5-tech will he play in the rotation?
Yeah, that's a good question about 5-tech. I don't know a whole lot. If he's going to be the starting nose tackle, you got Wormley there. He's going to pick up those snaps, so maybe a little bit, but honestly, maybe not a whole lot. In terms of adding weight, maybe a little, but I think the more important thing is less about weight to play good nose tackle. Obviously, you want to have a guy with some size and some mass, but you need leverage, you need strength, you need hand use and vision and block deconstruction, and those things are infinitely more important than just how much you weigh on the scale.
All right, who's the surprise guy that makes the final roster? Or maybe a better question is, which position? Henry Mondo, Bandy, Spillane. I wouldn't view Spillane as a surprise roster guy. I think it'd be more of a surprise if Spillane doesn't make the 53-man roster. So who is a surprise guy who could make the final 53-man roster?
I was having this conversation the other day. It just feels so bland at this point because, we don't have eyes on these guys, and there's no preseason for a young guy, rookie, undrafted guy to prove himself. So it really feels kind of chalk. I had Tyreek Cannell on my initial roster before camp started. Of course, he's been released by now. I put the voodoo curse on him. So it's really hard to find a name. I really struggle to come up with somebody that would be super out of left field, and maybe that guy exists, but of course we won't even get the chance to see it.
I got a feeling it would maybe be an outside linebacker or something. I'm struggling too, or maybe does Raider qualify?
Yeah, he would qualify for sure. I mean, you think he's got a chance to beat out Gentry, or do you think he's number 4 tight end?
Who would be a surprise guy? I mean, that would be a surprise guy, I think.
I mean, if you want to go to linebacker, James Lockhart beating out Tuzar Skipper.
Yeah, I think that's the only other way I could go. I mean, from where we sit here right now, that kind of plays into his next question here. What do you think is the status of Skipper?
Yeah, I think he's in a really tough spot because we know the pass rush ability, at least what we saw last year, but the big bugaboo with him was special teams. They just refuse to put him out there. And you don't have preseason this year. You can't even play him there this year. Are those same concerns that ultimately got him to not make the week 1 roster when they cut him on that Saturday before? Is that what's going to be his hang up again? So I think they're going to keep 5 outside linebackers because they're only going to keep 4 inside linebackers, I believe. Probably going to keep 9 in total, so there's 5 on the outside. But could he lose that spot to somebody? I don't think so. But when I say there's no chance of that happening, no, I will not.
And I think Skipper, I mean, better than the Baylor James
Lockhart.
Lockhart just not a special teams, and at least not what I've seen so far. I think Skipper, the better special teams player at this point, which isn't probably saying too terribly much, but it's going to be hard for Lockhart, I think, to overtake Skipper on the special teams aspect of it.
Is that Leo Lewis is the inside linebacker that's still here over Skipper?
Yeah, maybe. I guess. I mean, that would be a surprise.
Mm-hmm. It's just tough. We just don't have much to go off of. We're all flying blind right now, so it really makes this stuff very difficult.
Anthony Mcfarland, this guy seriously excites me. How old is he? If he can stay healthy and get a little thicker beneath the waist, he's pretty. Jay, he's put together pretty nice as it is. He goes on to say, if he can stay healthy and get a little thicker beneath the waist, he could be the next great Steelers back. So quick out of his breaks, running those short routes that could make Ryan Switzer blush. The vision is very nice, and his finish is rare for a guy that size. I was mulling a comparison for him and came up with Ray Rice. Ray Rice a lot more thicker, right?
Mm-hmm. He was thicker. Yeah.
He goes on to say he's going to be a problem every time he's on the field. Just like to see him set up his blockers better. Saw him blow past his linemen when some patience would have been better. Great job keeping quality content through the slog. Thanks for that, James. You got the kid in with the Chargers, the Eckhart, a little bit smaller back. You got obviously the Denver undrafted free agent. It's so hard, I think, for these smaller guys to be full-time guys in a fungible world.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially with the Steelers feature back mentality. But I'm excited for McFarland. I think he'll have a niche role this year. I think he'll play it well. I think he brings that explosive, bursty element to the run game and the short pass game that they could really use, and maybe in the kick return game as well. So, yeah, and McFarland, I've seen some conflicting stuff on his age. ESPN has him at 21, though. So that's what we're going with right now, 21 years old.
Here's where I am at Jay Barbardian. McFarland is very intriguing guy. And once again, like I said, after getting into his film, I understand why the Steelers got him and got him where they did. I think he's a guy for the next 4 seasons you could have a lot of fun with. He can he could be a guy that touches the ball 10, 12 times a game. I think he can get in that situation. Maybe the occasional 21 touches a game type situation there. As long as he's got that speed working for him and ability to and look, I think he right out of the chute, I think he's a guy that can I think Alex and I have said maybe high side 100 touches for him. I think a lot's got to happen for him to get those 100 touches his rookie season, but if he does hit that, it's because he's probably made the most of a few of his touches early in the season, i.e. explosive plays. He is that kind of guy that you can do a lot with. On the flip side, to get him on the field, you got to hand him the football, first and foremost. In fact, the first couple times he comes into the game, I want it to be running plays, because that'll make the defenses have to respect him as a runner first and foremost, and then that's when you explore the other avenues of getting him the ball out in space. I like him. I just don't think he's the next great Steelers running back, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's a fair middle ground. I'm just focused on the here and now and just trying to get him involved, making sure they are going to have a role for him, because snaps will still be tough to come by, because as we know, his team is a feature back mentality, and Connor's still going to be the guy, and Benny Snell is still the next man up. So hopefully this team is creative enough to make sure they're getting McFarland work in, which I think they will be, but want to see it happen.
I think best case scenario after his rookie, assuming he stays all 4 years of his rookie contract, how many total touches? 500?
That's 4 years out. I mean that's a big projection there. I really
all right. What about
next?
What about we've already said 100 touches would be probably monumental for him as a rookie, right? 100 touches. So how many for the next 2 seasons?
Well, let's just say for his sophomore year, 2021, you go from 100 his rookie year to, let's exclude return stuff. I don't know, 200, 220 next year.
Boy, that's a lot.
Too much?
That's a lot of touches, isn't it?
Well, I mean, if Connor's gone, I mean, if he's at 100 this year and then you just lost your starting running back and we assume maybe it's Snell and Mcfarland next year.
What if we went 175? Can I get you to come down to 175?
Auction year this thing. I mean that 175, 200 range. But again, if you lose James Conner, you're going to lose a lot of snaps.
Okay. All right. So look.
I'm saying that's touches too. That's receptions and carries, obviously.
I long and short of it, I think Barbati here is just a little bit too bullish on him.
Yeah, I get that.
Let's move on here to Ted Webb writes in, with a lot of conferences not playing football this fall, you think the Combine would expand its participants since especially a lot of players will have no film for the 2020 season? Yeah, that's a good point, Ted. I don't know what way they're going to go on. I don't have a clue how the Combine is going to be impacted by these few of these conferences not playing.
Yeah, it's wild. Got a lot of top prospects opting out and declaring for the draft, which I totally support that. So a lot of questions there. We still don't even really understand the college football landscape right now. So until we do that, it's hard to even talk about anything Combine related.
Michael Carlson writes in, hey guys, I was wondering if you could give some insight on what or who determines a player's position. For example, Trey and Terrell Edmonds are brothers with similar size and weight measurables, yet one plays running back and one plays safety. I'm assuming positions are usually most stabilized in college. How do coaches look at a bunch of guys with similar frames and decide of those, and he's got in parentheses, of those 3 6'5" guys, that one is a quarterback, that one is a guard, and that one is a tight end? That describes Big Ben, Castro, and Dax Raymond. Even Claypool is 6'4".
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think probably like 2 coaches help determine it. Like one, your peewee coach who just puts you wherever, and that was just the position you ended up playing and what you kind of grew up with. And then the college coach that recruits you and says that because you probably were a 2-way guy in high school, and your college coach says, okay, this is where we want to play you. So I think those are probably the 2 most influential coaches: your peewee coach, one of your first coaches, and whoever you had in college. But it varies for each guy, and there are definitely some interesting scenarios about what ifs if this guy would have played a different position.
Yeah, I think there's certain skill sets that you probably look for at that college level when you get them coming out of high school. Look, Juju was a safety, wasn't he?
I think he played some safety.
Played some safety. And look, a lot of these guys are super athletic, and they come out of high school having played multiple positions, right?
Mm-hmm. They were the best athlete. They were the guy.
Right. And that's generally what happens. So and obviously once you get into college, then it's water. You got a lot of good athletic guys there, and then it comes up to the coaches to say, okay, this, look at who was my tight end Georgia prospect this year.
Charlie Warner.
Yeah, Charlie Warner.
How do you forget?
Shame on me. You read deeper into kind of his high school. He was a high school receiver and a damn good one, but just didn't. They thought, well, because of his frame and experience with kind of how those kind of guys bulk up a little bit. That's kind of when he got to Georgia. They said, look, son, you're going to be a tight end. Mm-hmm. So he went from being an all-state whatever wide receiver, I think he played a little bit of quarterback if memory serves me, to all of a sudden going to be a tight end, at the college level. So I would think the college coach has one of the largest, position coach and head coach at college level has some of the biggest say of kind of what shapes these guys position-wise.
Mm-hmm. And really some of it's happenstance. Look at Ben. He was a receiver in high school his first 3 years because the coach's son was playing quarterback, and he left after senior year, and so Ben became the quarterback his senior year. What if they would have been in the same class? Ben would have never been the quarterback for that team, and what was that, Findlay, Ohio, and probably not the Ben he is today. So just sometimes like that can change the career arc.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see here. Here's another one from Nolan D. Considering the Steelers' inability to pay Juju, drafting Claypool, and signing a wide receiver today, he's talking about Ray-Ray. Do you see the Steelers?
People really think Ray-Ray's doing something.
I guess. I don't know. What are we missing on tape here? Maybe we need to do a more complete breakdown on Ray-Ray. And signing a wide receiver. Do you see the Steelers trading Juju for a first-round pick to the New York Jets or another wide receiver team? Nolan, look, I guess I get it. I guess these questions are more stemming from the fact that especially the last couple of weeks or so, I guess me more particularly, you seem to open up a little bit more to the idea of Juju returning after this season than I am. I guess that's a lot of where these questions are coming from, right? The fact that they're starting, I think, a more and more growing speculation that Juju's not going to be back in 2021. That's leading people to think, well, all right, can we deal him now and get something? I guess I understand that. It goes back to the way we answered this other question, though. How does it make your team better this year by trading Juju? Now, look, I mean, if you could get a first for him, which I don't think you can, even then, I mean, does it make your team better now?
No, it doesn't. I don't think anyone would argue that. I think there's just maybe people are watching the Pirates too much and knowing how they're selling right now and thinking about rentals and losing this guy after this year and free agents and all that. But the Steelers are in a win-no mentality. This is the best roster they'll have to win a Super Bowl. They certainly could win a Super Bowl this year, and you do not trade away Juju for that. Plus, his value is not incredibly high right now.
Right, it's not. And I mean, I think max you could get for him is a third, and that's max. And even so, it does not make you a better team now. And you have to stay in the now trying to win. Look, this team got a chance to win it all, I think, this year. And I think trading Juju away lessens that chance.
I would, though, call Oakland and ask for 5 first-round picks just to see what John Gruden just troll him a little bit.
I hear you. Where's Juju going to end up? Patriots, Miami. Someone's throwing out there.
He's going to do that. He's going to be back in Pittsburgh.
All right, we'll see. I'm
convincing myself more than you over here.
Look, I'm hopeful for him. Look, I wish I don't hate the guy at all. I mean, I just think from an economic side and a history side that it's going to be very hard for him to keep. I hope they figure out a way maybe to do that. I love James Conner too as a human being, and I think I think both him and Juju have an extraordinary good chance at bouncing back and being similar players to what they were in 2018. But they both got to stay healthy first and foremost, and Ben's got to stay healthy too. Because if you don't have Ben, those guys are not going to have bounce back seasons. Plain and simple there. But I do like the chances of Juju and Connor both bouncing back. The problem is I just don't see how you keep either one of those guys because of the financial situations.
Right, and the cost, it will cost you if they do bounce back because it won't be cheap to retain.
Right. All right, we got through the questions here. We will be back on, I guess, Tuesday here. Hopefully we have something to recap on Saturday. That'll be fun to have a fun practice or a foolish kind of more foolish kind of practice to recap there. So in the meantime, anything else to add, Alex, before we get out of here?
Nope, I think that's everything. Yeah, we'll be back on Tuesday. I don't know. Don't get your hopes up for that Saturday practice. I think it's going to be maybe more of the same. We'll see.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we're doing, you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit that donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can get an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Until Tuesday, everybody have a great weekend. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.